So hello and welcome, and thanks for joining us, the Mentor Education Student Information Session. Today we'll be covering our FNS40815 Certificate 4 in Finance and Mortgage Broking, and also the FNS50315 Diploma of Finance and Mortgage Broking Management. I have with us subject matter expert Miller, who's also a head trainer and assessor here at Mentor Education for the Finance and Mortgage Broking suite of courses we have, and Education and Advice Senior Member Earl Brooks. Welcome, both of you.
Hello. Hello.
Excellent. So we'll get underway. First and foremost, let's talk a little bit about the course overview. Now, with the slide up here in front of us, we can see the Finance and Mortgage Broking program is designed for individuals who wish to offer finance and mortgage broking services. A lot of our courses, particularly these ones, have a really strong practical, experimental focus and practical focus, which encourages the application of principles. Now, Miller, I'm going to hand on over to you to give us a little bit of insight, I suppose, into talking around the course, some of the outcomes that students can expect, okay, and some of the skill sets that you might pick up at a really high level.
Sure. Look, there's a few different ways of joining this course to do it. Obviously, there's a diploma level with 15 individual modules that can be completed for, I would recommend for somebody that might be in the industry already or has been exposed to the financial service previously, and basically just completing 15 individual modules. So another way of doing things is completing the Certificate 4, which 8 out of those 15 modules will be clustered in Certificate 4, which covers the basic knowledge of the mortgage broking industry. So it's an entry level, it's an entry point to join MFAA or any of the aggregation services, and then after gaining some experience, doing the upgrade of another 7 modules and completing diploma, which for somebody like MFAA or most of the aggregators is a minimum requirement to complete within 12 months of joining the industry. So, and some lenders as well, they have the policy that they might let you join the industry at Certificate 4, and within 12 months they expect you to complete full diploma. So there's a few ways of doing it, and it's really coming down to experience or your personal experience, or how do you actually want to go about it. Like we can guide you through the processes anyway.
Okay, great. Now, up there in front of us, we've got, I suppose, some of the outcomes of the course, which allow you to assess client loan applications, assist clients through the lending process, and the tools that protect clients and ensure the client's suitability with respect to lending and finance. Now, if I was to enter at a Certificate 4 level, would I be able to do this? And with elimination, and why would I go on to say the diploma level after that?
Look, to start with, Certificate 4 covers the compliance side of it. That's the main aspect of it. Not the main aspect, it's one of the aspects that we're covering in Certificate 4, where we're covering the minimum requirements of the responsible lending obligations, things like networking opportunities, broker options for different client scenarios. How should I say it? Network opportunities is another thing. Like how would you approach any referrers and start to build a business? So, as I said, that's a basic knowledge. Where jumping from Certificate 4 to diploma level. In diploma level, we're doing 7 individual modules, where 3 of those modules are about broking options, as well as understanding of the different scenarios and complex needs of the clients. Then we have 2 modules that are based on the business running, the management side of it, and setting up the KPIs and looking at things from the employer's perspective, being a business owner rather than an employee, and running the things on your own. And then we have 2 modules that are based on the risks. Now, out of those 2 risk modules, one is actually specific to the financial services, and the other one is the business module, which can be applicable to, it can be applied to any business out there. So understanding of what sort of risks a business owner might be facing and mitigating those risks in advance.
Okay, so To simplify this a little bit then, Miller, certainly with the Certificate 4 in Finance and Mortgage Broking, it focuses, I suppose, on that lending and finance aspect. And then we get into that diploma level, we get more into the management aspect and quite possibly working for ourselves or running a firm and things like that.
Yeah, that's correct. And it's just not just running the firm. Like most of the brokers are one to two people operators, where they might have, husband and wife scenarios where one might be writing the deals and the other one might be processing. So that's the majority of the business opportunities that you find out there. So how people are running the businesses anyway. But it can be taking at a different scale where you employ people, the loan writers, somebody that might be taking the calls and doing the qualifying of the clients, but also, having a number of people working within the business. So the diploma covers both aspects of it.
Okay, great. Now, just to confirm, Miller, if I was to take on the Certificate 4 pathway, okay, so I was to do my Certificate 4 in Finance and Mortgage Broking, I would then be in a position to take on a role as a finance and mortgage broker, but I would be limited in, I suppose, the period of time that I could do that because I'd be required to upgrade at a later stage. Is that correct?
Sure. Look, joining two industry regulators, one of them is MFAA, which is the Mortgage Finance Association Australia. They will allow you to join at Certificate 4, but they expect you to complete diploma within 12 months. That's at the moment. Where FBAA doesn't require you, and joining any of these industries will actually allow you to join any of the aggregation services. Now, majority of the aggregators that on a different aspect of it, like a majority of aggregators will expect you within 12 months to complete diploma anyway. So yeah, it's becoming a minimum requirement, and it started back in 2006 where they started talking about that diploma is going to be a minimum requirement in the industry, and now it's taking it a bit more. They're taking it a bit more seriously.
Okay, great. Now you mentioned a couple of terms there, Miller, being the MFAA and the FBAA. So once I complete my qualification, whether it be a Cert 4 or a diploma, I'm required to operate under an industry association.
Yes,
and that's what the MFAA or FBAA is. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And they would have their minimum requirements to join, which could be, one of them is having completed anti-money laundering, as well as Certificate 4 as a minimum requirement, and police check. And it's actually an entry, it's a first step to go through before you can actually approach the aggregators to join.
Okay, great. Now, what we've got up here in front of us is a little bit about the industry and the job overview. Now, you spent quite a number of years working in, I suppose, as a finance and mortgage broker. I suppose talking to some of the information that we've got up in front of us, can you give us a little bit of insight into your experience and what, I suppose, day-to-day activities in the finance and mortgage broking industry might look like?
There's a lot of learning, especially at the beginning, somebody joining the industry. First thing, other than having to go through accreditation process of aggregators, and it could be the lenders accreditations, there's a lot of time that you have to spend on learning learning the policies of different lenders, and they all have their individual niches where they might apply to different client scenarios. So that's a process that will probably take anywhere from 3 to 4 months to actually learn the lenders. That is one of the aspects of it. But then even when you become accredited broker and you start writing deals, you will have to go through updates, like probably every 2 or 3 months. You would like to catch up with the business development manager from the lender to see what's new, what opportunities that they might have, and why they might be different when there's so many different lenders out there. So there's a lot of learning and keeping up to date with the policies. It doesn't have to be face-to-face. There's a lot of online learning, and all the updates are given to you from aggregators with the current policies that you get. But another aspect of the business is a lot of networking. Like, how do you get that deal? How do you get another client? Obviously, it's a lot easier once you're in the business and you have your happy clients referring business to you, and that's great. You don't have to advertise. That's beautiful. But how do you get to that level? That's the biggest thing. So the beginning of it, as well as allowing for the cash flow when you start the business, that you actually, so you can actually commit to the business 100% and spend time on going out there to see real estate agents, financial planners. There's a lot of business referred to within the community, or whatever networks that you might have. So yeah, there's a lot of networking. That's what's coming down to. As well as the final stage is seeing the client and knowing knowing how to present different options to the client, and that's an easy part. That's probably only about 10% of the business. There's a lot of aspects of it that has to come in place to actually get to that level, so you can actually see the client. So, yeah.
Okay, great. And look, talk to me a little bit about, I suppose, the expectations and flexibility with respect to the job role. I mean, is it a 9 to 5 sort of job, or do you find yourself working evenings, weekends? What happens in that space?
It's really coming down to the individual broker. Like most people expect mortgage brokers, not to say most people, there's a lot of people actually expect mortgage brokers to come to their homes after hours when they're comfortable and they have time to commit to talk about financial services, rather than taking the time out from their normal day routine. So, or on the weekends. So seeing the clients is one of the things where you have to go through the needs analysis to see what they're actually looking for, then coming back to your office and trying to find a solution for them that might be most suitable, and not just one solution, to be a bit different than one individual bank, to actually have a few different solutions to present to them. So going back to do that. So there's a lot of talk while you're doing your qualifying for the client. There's a lot of talks that you spend time talking to the BDMs from the banks to see how do we actually make things work. Sometimes things are outside the policy, so there's a lot of time spent on that. And then going back to see the clients, and if they're happy with it, if they have all the documents prepared, you would write the mortgage and go back and submit it to the lender after you collect all the required documents. So that's pretty much when it comes to the loan scenarios. But there's a lot of time that you have to spend on going back after you get the documents. You want to go back to see the clients to actually explain what the fees and charges might be applicable, or how does it actually apply to them, and make sure they're comfortable with all of that. And then they sign the documents, witnessing it, and sending it to the lender. Then just waiting for the settlement. That's what's coming down to when it comes to dealing with the clients. But 9 to 5, it's a bit hard to say. I don't think that really exists. In a lot of cases, it doesn't exist, because there's a lot of times that you have to spend trying to build the network of the referrers. So that could be talking to the financial planners, real estate agents, catching up for coffee, and showing why you might be different than any other broker out there. So what does it matter? What is there that makes you attractive more than somebody else? Why would they deal with you? So in some cases that there could be, commission splits. It could be just a relationship for what it is, because they're happy with how you deal with the clients. So there's a number of different things. Setting up your own network groups, that's another way of building the business from the beginning. And a lot of people talk about BNI, which is the Business Network International, the biggest networking group in the world, I suppose. So joining somebody like that in your specific area, or just starting your own, where you might have 1 or 2 people from different businesses trying to cross-refer business to each other.
Right. Well, it certainly sounds very entrepreneurial. There's no doubt about it.
Sure is. It doesn't have to be. For some people, it could be just joining an established group and being a loan writer where clients are referred to them already and just looking after the needs. Depending how do you take it? Do you take it as a business owner or a loan writer, or maybe just a processing role? To get comfortable with the back-end processes of the lenders, and then slowly going out on your own. So there's a number of different ways of doing it.
Okay, great. So by this stage, we've got a bit of an idea as to some of the outcomes of the course, what a day in the life of a finance or mortgage broker might look like, some of the opportunities out there. Let's take a bit of a dive into the learning material itself and actually how it's delivered. So certainly with the Certificate 4 and Diploma of Finance and Mortgage Broking that's offered for a mentor, what are some of the expectations potential or future students could have with respect to the learning material available to them?
The learning material from Certificate 4 aspect, everything is covered in the learning guides, the learning material that they're getting, and it's all, they can access it online. So everything that they need to know to complete Certificate 4 assessment is in there. So it's just a matter of going through the learning material and probably taking it step by step, doing it in 8 individual sessions and not rush through it. Maybe going back to, sometimes if things don't make sense, to go back to learning guides or sometimes even the assessment itself and maybe correct. Because once you go through things and you start thinking, all right, I might have done this just basic, I can go back now and make it a bit more sufficient. There's an ability to do that because all the assessments are saved as a Word document and gives you ability to make changes as you go. So once all the material, learning material is read, assessment will be completed. Part of the Certificate 4 assessment is we have a number of questions which is covering about 8 clustered modules in that one assessment guide, if you like. Part of that assessment is also we have to complete one lender loan application. So we have a little case scenario. So just to give a bit of insights what lender expects from the broker to do. So completing the assessment form, and also we have a few other forms in there where we're trying to get new brokers understand what processes they have to go through for the first home buyers, as well as for somebody that might be buying an established or a new property where they get discounts from State Revenue Office. So there's a few additional forms as well as the assessment. That's what the Certificate 4. When it comes to diploma level, they're done as 7 individual modules. So there's 2 parts to the assessment. So we're looking at least 2 types of evidence to make sure that somebody is competent in that particular module. So we have activity part, which has to be completed, and there's the written question type of assessment at the end of it. There's also in the learning guides, there's a third-party report for somebody that might be employed in the industry and they would like the employer or supervisor to go through the assessment and going through all the criteria and making sure that they're competent and just explaining why or how they actually met the competency. There's opportunity for somebody for another assessment tool within diploma level.
Okay, great. And look, we've just had a question come in, Miller, and just confirming that all the textbooks and learning material is included with the course itself.
Yes, it is. It's all online.
Excellent. So speaking of online, let's have a bit of a look at the online learning experience. I mean, what can students expect? I mean, certainly they'll need a stable internet connection and a browser to access it. But what sort of feedback do you traditionally get?
Look, most of the people are able to actually go through the learning guide. It makes sense after they read it and go through the assessments. But anytime they are uncertain of what needs to be done, we'll get a phone call from them where it gets passed to the assessor that looks after the different aspects of it. And, you know, for any time that they're doubting it or uncertain of how to complete, they have that ability to access the trainers and go through the processes.
Okay, excellent. And we briefly touched on it, and I know it's an area that most prospective students are very interested in. And without giving too much away, of course, Miller, the assessment process. I mean, are we looking at exams? Are we looking at real-world application, assignments, role plays? What happens in that space?
At Certificate 4 level, for instance, we'll be doing the written assessment with some forms that I mentioned earlier, that additional forms that have to be completed. And if when the students reach the competent level of competency, we'll ask them to book the role play, which is really going through about 15 questions or so from the assessment itself, just to make sure that they have a full understanding of what they answered. Obviously, it doesn't have to be done at 100%. But at the same time, that's an opportunity for students to talk about some things. And if they're not sure how to answer, we can always come back to it. And it doesn't have to, we're not here to fail anybody. We're actually here to work together to make sure they're competent. So that's what's coming down to. But it also gives, that role play is an opportunity for students to find out more about the insides of the industry. That's where we share our own experience of how to do different things that they might they might have questions on. So, yeah.
Okay, great. So in addition to our traditional assessments, then we've also got that live role play. And I think, I mean, certainly that's a tool which can be used and very effective in getting a workplace ready so that you're comfortable in stepping into that role.
It's almost like I would like to put students on the spot sometimes. They actually, where I become a client and they have to convince me why would I actually deal with them, like to prepare them for the industry, as you mentioned earlier. So, you know, that's what they'll be facing out there. They might have knowledge, but at the end of the day, it's coming down to the clients liking them and having a reason why to go ahead with them. So there's a lot of brokers out there.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And now moving on to the courses themselves and the support. And before I hand on over to you, Earl, the Certificate 4 in Finance and Mortgage Broking, we give students 6 months to complete that, Miller, and then 12 months for the diploma. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
And in your experience, do students usually take up that full 6 months or 12 months or whatever it may be? Or, I mean, that's certainly, you know, is there an opportunity to do it part-time, full-time? What's the 6 months?
6 months for Certificate 4 is more than sufficient. Most people will probably, if they're committed enough to it, they'll complete it within 2, but that gives them a lot of buffer to deal with. Sometimes there are some circumstances where people can't complete it in 6 months, and they have an opportunity to extend it for 2 months for free if needs to be. So anything can happen in life. And it's really coming down to, like, diploma could be a bit more under a lot of pressure when sometimes students or brokers, they forget that they have to complete that diploma within 12 months. And 2 months before 2 months before the 12 months expiry from the aggregators, they realize that they have to complete it. So it puts them under a lot of pressure, and they still complete it within 2 or 3 months. But they have to put a lot of work towards it. So, yeah.
Okay, great. And look, one more before you head off there, Miller, and I hand on over to Earl, is we have, I suppose, a couple of different study options, and one of them is the 100% online self-directed learning. But then we also have an opportunity for students to take advantage of virtual tutorials, okay, and online tutorials. What can they expect from that, and what might that experience look like?
It gives students an opportunity to think about the questions and submit it to a trainer in advance. So the trainer can prepare and give them specific answers for those questions that they might have and not be put on the spot. But it is something that there's an opportunity for somebody that actually wants to go through the virtual classes and sometimes not just learning from, not just thinking of their own questions, listening to the other questions and getting the answers there, will get them in a spot where they didn't even think about it, but they're getting the answer for it. So, yeah.
Great. And so probably just to confirm as well, I mean, the virtual tutorials is, I suppose, a little bit like the experience that we're going through today, where you do have the opportunity to interact with the lecturer and teacher live, but also other students as well. And I think that's a valid point that you make about listening to other students' questions, because there are things that they may have thought of that, you know, you don't necessarily come up with, and whatever it may be. And also another piece of feedback, and you could probably confirm this with me, I suppose another advantage of that is having that structure and that, you know, I suppose regular communication with students in your cohort and the trainer and assessor. Would that be fair to say? Definitely.
It's a virtual classroom, so that's what it is.
Okay, great. Now, Earl, I'm going to hand on over to you to talk to us a little bit about student support and what students can expect with respect to those kind of things. Okay, it looks like we may have just lost Earl there. He's frozen. So I'm going to hand back to you, Miller. You talked a little bit about it earlier on, and that was the email support and phone support that students can expect.
Yes, I personally like that phone conversation. So all my students have the opportunity to actually talk to me. Obviously, with the time restraints, it's a bit hard sometimes because I might be doing the role play or interviews with the students. But we always, call back and try to set up a convenient time to go through any issues that they might be having. So yeah, definitely.
And certainly that phone support is available during business hours.
Business hours, yes, definitely. And sometimes it might mean that we get an email overnight and just a call in the following day, and that's what happens. So,
yeah. Okay, great. So there's certainly plenty of opportunities for feedback there, irrespective of what path you go down, whether it be the self-directed or if you do decide to take advantage of, I suppose, of the virtual tutorials.
And this is open to any type of experience. It could be, as I said earlier, like there might be people that are broken already, so they are in the industry, understand it, and they need minimum support. Where somebody that's novice to it, they'll definitely need a bit more. So guidance is what we do provide. So yeah.
Okay, great. Now, I've just got a list of questions, and I'll do my best to cover off on most of these when I can and where I can, of course. And that's the first one, of course, is can I get government funding? Now, Midori is a private college. We don't offer any government funding. But that said, there are a range of payment plan options that are available on a number of courses. Whether or not they apply to the finance and mortgage broking suite is the sort of information that you would need to speak to educational advice team member about. When can I start? Now, students really can start just about any time. Certainly with the self-paced or the virtual tutorials. I understand the virtual tutorials are also recorded, Miller. So if I did start, halfway through a term or a semester or a teaching period, there's no problem going back. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, you can view it at any time.
Okay, great. And certainly all of those can be found, the timetable for them can be found on the Mentor Education website as well. So to answer that in short, you can start just about any time. Is it all included? And we certainly covered this a little bit earlier on. All the textbooks are included, all of that kind of stuff. And any extra fees for assessments, Miller?
No, there's nothing. Only time that they might have to pay extra is if they had to extend the course. So the first extension would be done for free for the first 2 months. And then if they still need some time to extend, then they will be charged about $150 or so for another 2 months.
Okay, but that's only if, but certainly if there's extenuating circumstances, and students are quite open with us, we're very flexible with that kind of
and
stuff.
Look, we had circumstances with marriage breakages, or it could be the family sickness. So, I don't think anybody ever charged them for some circumstances like that. So.
Well, that's it. Life certainly happens, and it's about fitting in study around it. And I think that's certainly one of the advantages of the online space. The difference with the study options, we've probably covered that quite well and truly, and that was the self-paced online versus those with the virtual tutorials. Okay, and we've sort of talked about the benefits of those. Is it nationally recognised? Absolutely, yes, it is. So yeah, all around Australia. Prerequisites, Miller, for Certificate 4 or Diploma?
None.
Okay, and then those.
There's no prerequisites. Obviously, there's students need to be able to read and speak English. That's one of the I would say. But there's no minimum qualifications to join the industry, other than what we're doing now.
Okay, great. And then how long do people usually take to finish? I dare say we've covered that pretty much well today as well.
Yeah, so Certificate 4 anywhere from 2 to 6 months. Most would finish within 3, I would say. It really depends how much time they allow for the studying, and diploma, depending if they're doing the 15 modules, straight diploma or upgrade, so within 12 months.
Okay, great. And that brings us to questions. And I've just had one come in from Juan, and I'll follow up with him individually on that. That's just in respect to RPL. And if students did want any more information, Miller, where would they head to?
Look, they can always call our office, and our admin team will determine which department to actually transfer them to. Are they going to be talking to the assessor with a specific question that might be related to the assessment or learning guides, or if they need some support on payments or extensions? So admin team will determine where to transfer the calls to.
Okay, great. Now, before we finish up today, Miller, is there any, I suppose, anything you'd like to add? insight, I suppose into the finance and mortgage broking world, the training experience, the qualification for any prospective students out there who are watching?
It's a great industry to join, and I really like the financial aspect of it. Somebody joining a franchise, buying a Subway for $200,000 or $300,000 to actually start a business is a lot different to something where you do have to spend some money on the qualifications, but we're still talking within $2,000 or $3,000 you'll be qualified to go out there and do mortgage broking on your own. Obviously, there's a commitment, which is the mentoring process as well for a lot of people at the completion of the qualifications. But it's a low entry to get into the business. So even for somebody wanting to try, they won't have to spend a fortune to see if they like the industry or not. So yeah, it's a great industry to be in, and especially for somebody that wants to work about the family, kids, ability to work from home or from the office, depending which model students like to take. But it is a great industry to be in, and like uncertain times that we're facing at the moment, people think like, are there opportunities out there? Of course there are. Like these are the times when people come in, they might not be buying the new houses at the moment, but they're struggling with the current debt of credit cards, personal loans, car loans, and wanting to combine all those and consolidate into one loan, just to allow for the cash flow to get through the hard period that they're facing at the moment. So opportunities are everywhere. Okay,
great. Well, thank you very much. And look, to close off, if you want any more information, certainly on any of the courses available, head on over to the Mentor Education website. So that's mentor.edu.au. And if you do want to have a look back on this live session, head on over to our Facebook page where it'll be available under videos. We're actually streaming live on Facebook today, so you can actually catch a rerun of that there. So once again, thanks for your time today, Miller.
Thank you. Good luck to all new students.
Excellent. Thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.